Now, turning to the larger economic crisis, the coming crash, SGT has the report, watching the clock. Will a total economic collapse occur in September or October? Obviously, no man knows the hour unless, of course, it's contrived. But what you do when you analyze things and try to track trends is you want that overlay effect where you have one report matching with another. That's when it becomes significant. That's when it becomes a likely trend. That's when there's something going on behind the scenes. And so they put together all these different warnings and show how the timing adds up to right before the elections. Is it an October crisis, or are they just unable to contain the economic crash from happening any sooner? Well, there's the warning, first of all, that was on Alex's show a couple days ago from the St. Louis officer, worried about how he's been told in October they need to be prepared for an event that will require them to use air and ground support in conjunction with the military. Very startling. That overlaid with the Silver Doctors report from the LEAP 2020 analysis for a red alert for the banking systems in September or October. That's when they say the trumpet blast will occur. Basically, the wall will come crashing down, and they won't be able to plug their little fingers in the dam any longer. In fact, it will spill over. That's according to their analysis. Then there's the third warning from Art Cashin of Zero Hedge, who talks about how the frequency with which the world goes to hell in September hardly seems random. And in fact, there's a chart to support this where you see at least 25 incidences in September where a banking crisis started, way more than all the other months. Something is going on there. That's also when you typically see the gold and silver runs as far as on the per annum basis, month to month. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but it could be used for false flag control, October surprise, getting Obama reelected, or alternately giving a reason to give him the push and bring in Mitt Romney, the new savior, who will go for all these wars in the Middle East, who will go for all the austerity they want and more. Meanwhile, in Europe, after Greece, Ireland, Portugal, and Spain have all asked for bailouts with more countries on the way, Cyprus has officially joined as the 5th member of the EU to seek a rescue. They want as much as 10 billion in euros, which is about 12.5 billion in dollars, because their banks are heavily exposed to Greece. Of course, Cyprus is kind of split between the pro-Greece faction and the extremely anti-Greece Turkish-backed faction. That will all just complicate things. But basically, you've got the head of the Cyprus Popular Bank being a former World Bank chairman, being a former part of this occupying system, now asking for money to recapitalize the very banky heads. It's very strange. And then converse to that, they've got this communist president, Dimitris Christofias, the only communist leader in the EU, who's blasted the whole bailout system, calling it a colonial force. The European Central Bank, the European Commission, the IMF, all working to occupy these countries, and basically that is what's going on. But now he's going to have to turn inward and accept that kind of bailout as the only so-called solution. But the other thing to notice is Cyprus, just like Spain, has asked them not to do the austerity measures that's been such a big issue in Greece and Ireland and to a certain extent in Portugal. Another thing to keep an eye on, but the hammer is starting to fall in the U.S. too, as Stockton, California is the latest city to file for bankruptcy. It's going to be the largest U.S. city to fall to date. It has almost 300,000 people in it. The nation's largest city to seek protection under the U.S. bankruptcy code after its city council Tuesday stopped bond payments, slashed employee health and retirement benefits, and adopted a day-to-day survival budget. And they had a meeting, and everyone in the town was sad about the bankruptcy they basically knew was coming for some time. The city made $90 million in drastic cuts from its general fund in the last 3 years, reducing the police department by 25%, fire department by 30%. This is, again, a city that has the second highest foreclosure rate in the whole country and one of the highest crime rates in all of California, and here it is. The thing is, it didn't have to go this way. If you find out about CAFR, if we reallocate budgets in a sensible way, but the public doesn't know. That's why you need to stay tuned to the end of this interview. We're going to talk about California and their big pension dry up and their inability to fund these governments that are bloated, yes, but which have reserve capital no one knows about that is plenty to deal with the issue. That's with Carl Herman later in the broadcast. But finally, in the economic fold, tonight we have the big banks crafting living wills in case they fail. And Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan is telling us this will help the cost to taxpayers. This will allow banks to fail without it falling on the public. Well, we don't know if that's true, but they're saying these measures could be basically equivalent to reinstating Glass-Steagall, which they should probably do anyway. You've got Sheila Bair also backing the issue, and on the surface, it is the system, the regulatory agencies of the government forcing the big banks to basically set the architecture for decoupling, setting aside the normal day-to-day investments of people's accounts that should grow at a regular rate from the crazy speculation and the underwriting and all the other private equity stuff that really has caused all the derivatives problems, triggering the larger economic collapse. It's, of course, very complicated, but they've got the biggest banks here: J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, among others, being forced by the Federal Reserve and the FDIC to create these living wills for their liquidation, for the liquidation of the company. So we'll see. This is supposedly the solution under the Frank-Dodd Act. Instead of restating the Glass-Steagall Act, this is their model for liquidating these banks and saving the public. We'll see if it works. Something tells me not to hold my breath.